A while ago, I made a video covering the low tiers of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and as I'm a sucker for even numbers, I thought that the same format applied to Marvel vs. Capcom 2 would also be a lot of fun. So, I went on an online journey in search of a reputable tier list to base the video on, and I found one from a Marvel legend who needs no introduction. No, not Darkside Phil.
What? I was blocking! That was random.
But Justin Wong. The only problem, and some of my eagle-eyed viewers will notice, is that there are barely any characters for me to cover in these categories. To amend this, I've decided to cover the bottom half of the tier list in this video to figure out why and how these characters are placed here. As Justin Wong has been competing in Marvel 2 for longer than I've been alive, I know that I can trust the validity of his tier list. By the way, due to how old this game is, finding information, like frame data for example, about some of the more unpopular characters can be a bit challenging, as there's no official game guide for me to reference. As a result, I've had to scour the internet to find as much data about Marvel 2's characters as I could. A massive shout out goes to the character pages on Super Combo Wiki, and I'm getting a lot of my external information from this resource. Okay, without further ado, let's ignore these characters living up here in a really nice gated community and instead dive deep into these characters down here. As an ultra-efficient housekeeper robot and Mega Man's little sister, Roll is one of the most recognizable characters in the entire Mega Man series, and she's always there to help out those in need. While her kind personality is strong enough to cheer up anybody who's feeling down, I can't say the same about her fighting ability. For starters, Roll's range is shockingly bad. Due to her being very tiny, a vast majority of her normals can't reach very far, and although she can cover some ground distance with her slide, this move is useless in a game where many characters can just stay in the air for extended periods of time. In order for Roll to be quote-unquote effective, she has to be right up close to the enemy, as this will allow her to successfully attack the opponent, but if she is even a little bit far away, most of her normals will just flat out miss. This means that starting combos with Roll's normals in a real match against a live opponent is almost impossible, as even beginner players can just simply back away. Although Roll does have some projectiles that have decent range, these can also be avoided extremely easily with the most basic of movement techniques, so even something as simple as landing a single hit is an uphill battle. If Roll had really good movement speed, then you could easily rush the enemy down and combine her close range normals with assist to create pressure, but as Roll's movement also isn't anything special, this is also impossible. But wait, hang on a moment. Roll has supers that go full screen, right? So she definitely has long range options. Well, yeah, about that. Much like her range, Roll's supers suck. Hyper Roll, Beat Plane, and Rush Drill are what she has to offer, and we'll go over each of them. Hyper Roll is by far her best super, and it looks pretty good on a surface level. It's a full-screen projectile assault that can be used to close out combos or to start DHC routes, so it can't be that bad, right? Well, all of this is true, but it's literally just a worse version of Mega Man's projectile super. Not only does it do less damage on hit, but it also does 0 chip damage. If you ever catch a blocking opponent in a DHC string and you want to chip them out, this simply can't be done with Roll. Beat Plane lets Roll fly around and attack the enemy with bombs and bullets, but for some reason you can't activate the super in the air. Unlike Hyper Roll, this move is actually alright at doing chip damage, but unless you end it very far away from the opponent, you're going to get punished. Speaking of punishment, pretty much every move in this game can hit Roll out of Beat Plane, so if the enemy has access to a quick button or a super, you can easily get smacked. The cherry on top is that this move also has no invincibility on startup, so activating it at the wrong time can easily get you killed. Finally, Rush Drill is also alright for chip damage, and while you can speed the move up and move around during its time on screen, it has horrible startup and recovery. Finding realistic ways to utilize this move in an actual match is easier said than done, so you don't see the super very often. Even if you have lots of meter and the best initial hits in the world, Roll simply can't do lots of damage. Each of her normals and specials do well below average damage, and it means that even if you do land a hit, the opponent never has to worry. Even low health characters like Dalsum, for example, can easily survive a Roll combo without even breaking a sweat, so Roll has to rely on her teammates to secure the kill. This in itself is another weakness, as while even the best characters in this game rely on their partners to set up mix-ups, resets, combos, etc., they can still easily hold their own, which absolutely cannot be said for Roll. None of her assists are useful too, as they do low damage, have poor range and speed, and they can easily be outmaneuvered. Roll has a 37% health decrease, and this means that Roll takes 37% more damage than the average character. Storm may take this much damage from Cable's air super, but Roll takes a lot more. This means that she has the lowest health in the game, tied with the next character in the video, so if she gets clipped once by a stray super or a special, she's going to be sent to the infirmary. Even the most basic of combos can destroy Roll, so if you want to keep her alive, you're going to need very solid defense. This also means that she takes extra chip damage, so supers with large hitboxes that can hit from afar are very effective against Roll, even if she blocks. As a result of all this, Roll is considered to be the worst character in the entire game, and although she has her fans, it takes serious balls to pick her, and I don't mean soccer balls. In case Mega Man fans weren't hurting enough, Surfbot is also hilariously bad. As one of Tronbon's robot helpers, the Surfbots are admittedly very cute, but they lack anything that can help them to be taken seriously. As they're both from Mega Man, both Roll and Surfbot share a lot of the same weaknesses, so my heart goes out to fellow Surfbot fans around the globe. Surfbot has the same health value as Roll, so he also gets nuked by attacks. To combat this, the developers decided to make Surfbot even smaller than Roll, so while Roll can't avoid a move like this, for example, Surfbot can. This helps him to survive longer when dealing with projectiles in neutral, and because his tiny hurt box helps him fall out of certain combos, he does have some potential to survive big combos in DHC routes. On a personal note, I had to fight against a Surfbot player in a Marvel 2 tournament once, and all I had to do to take this character out was just loop Air Hyper Viper Beam. Even Roll herself can do some decent damage to Surfbot, so imagine how damaging common characters like Sentinel or Storm or Magneto can be. If you thought Roll had bad damage, you haven't seen anything yet though. Now, I'll admit, Surfbot supers can do some good damage, especially for Surfbot standards, but every other move he has possesses abysmal damage output. Hitting someone with his normals is the Marvel 2 equivalent of trying to take them out by blowing raspberries in their face, and his specials aren't damaging either. Surfbot has 4 of them, with the curry one taking the cake for me. Even if you hold down the button to charge this all the way, it does next to nothing, so it's essentially a joke move. You're supposed to use this to end combos and keep the enemy out with its anti-air version, but no opponent will ever have to worry about it. His minion summons are also nothing special, as while they take many forms, it's extremely easy to avoid them all, and even if one does somehow hit the enemy, they won't take any meaningful damage. Plus, it's not like Surfbot has a legitimate combo or mix-up or reset game, so even if he does do something like a magic series, it'll feel like getting tickled by someone who doesn't have arms. Although Surfbot's special moves have awesome animations, they have horrific frame data, so doing them is essentially a death sentence. If your opponent has access to a quick super, you can easily get blown up for attempting one of these, and it's even worse if they block it. Bull Mover is the worst special move when it comes to this, as even if you don't know anything about Surfbot, you can easily tell that this move has bad recovery just by looking at it. I'm pretty sure that every single character in this game has some way to punish Surfbot for throwing this move out, and as the risk reward is never in his favor, you'd never want to use this move outside of guaranteed combos. The fact of the matter is that even if you do a seemingly inconsequential move when at mid-screen or closer, Surfbot can expect to enter a world of hurt, so playing him requires patience and good timing. Finally, Surfbot has little to no support value. Just like Roll, his assists suck, he has limited DHC potential, and you'll never hear anyone praising him as their anchor or middle character or something like that. Surfbot can't damage the opponent, he can't support his teammates with assists, he can't make comebacks, and he can't even quickly build meter. Even the best characters in this game have weaknesses, but when a character only has weaknesses, it's a hard sell. At the very least, Surfbot is still cute as a button, so I guess that's the only thing he has going for him in Marvel 2. As the original fighting game joke character, Dan Hibiki has plenty of fans over the world who love his goofy personality and undefeatable taunts, so Dan being bad in this game is kind of the whole point of his character. You know what you're getting into when you pick Dan, and even though he sucks, he's still really fun, and I even saw him be used during an online tournament that I recently did commentary for, so there are some Dan players out there in the world. As a Street Fighter Shoto, Dan's mobility isn't very good. He can sort of cover the ground, but he doesn't have a double jump, air dash, teleport, or flight, so many amazing mobility tools are missing here. With all of that being said, he can use his air tatsu as a pseudo movement tool, but we'll cover this move in a bit. All of this means that Dan struggles hard to keep up with characters who can stay away from him, so he's forced to play their game when in neutral. There's nothing that Dan can do to compel the enemy to desperately come towards him, so he ends up chasing after the enemy a lot of the time. By doing this, Dan players can often get frustrated, making simple mistakes that leaves him open to being punished big time. This also means that he struggles hard against zoning, so characters like Cable, Cyclops, Blackheart, Sentinel, etc. all eat him alive for breakfast. Dan's special moves are better than Roll's and Surfbot's, thank god, but they're still not amazing. His Fireball does low damage and it doesn't go that far at all, so it's best to think of this move as a command normal of sorts. Dan's DP is also very standard, and you might notice that he flashes white every now and then. This means that he is invincible, and it happens on every 4th use, meaning that Dan has an invincible DP every 4 times he uses the move. I find this hilarious, and it really fits with his goofball persona, but I'd be lying if I said it was strong. Premium Sign is one of the funniest moves in the whole game, maybe even the whole series, but it does low damage, is very slow, and it leaves Dan open to being punished. You can cancel it into a super if you know the enemy will try and punish you, but it's still not amazing. Finally, his Tatsu is actually pretty solid, and it's his only quote-unquote good special move. This does some nice damage and it moves him forward, helping him to stay up close and personal with the enemy. Tatsu is also a great way to end combos too, so I really can't say anything negative here. Although this move is good, it doesn't excuse his other special moves, so overall, when you look at it holistically, Dan's special moves are pretty bad. Dan's support value is also lackluster, as none of his assists are particularly useful. You have a fireball with no range, a very slow projectile, and a DP that's also invincible on its 4th use, and it also has lots of recovery. This means combo extensions, resets, mix-ups, extended block strings, etc. are all nearly impossible to perform with Dan's assists. His DHC routes aren't that great either, as although his fireball super does allow for some sick combos in the corner, it's not great when at mid-screen. His DP super does nice damage, but it has poor horizontal range, and the upwards angle it sends the enemy flying at makes it hard for follow-up DHCs to connect. Finally, Dan's iconic Raging Demon, while it does insane damage, it also leaves him with a pixel of health, and you can't combo into this due to it being a grab. It's definitely possible to use this move on an unaware opponent, but it costs 3 bars of meter, and it can easily be avoided by holding up, so you'd only use this as a last-ditch effort move. Dan also doesn't have many moves to keep the enemy away from him. If a speedy character like Magneto was rushing him down, for example, Dan really only has access to his DP, and if that's blocked, it's game over. When you combine all this with his low health, it means that Dan struggles against zoning and rushdown, placing him in a really weird spot where he can't really shine in either situation. With all of that being said, it's an undeniable fact that Dan has the best taunts ever, so he's clearly S tier from now on, right? Working as an Interpol agent who's trying to defeat M. Bison, Chun-Li finds herself in the world of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and while she was super strong in Marvel 1, she was heavily nerfed for this game. Chun-Li is the first of the characters in this video that don't have much information about them online, and with Justin Wong saying that she could even go up on the tier list for reasons I'll cover later, I honestly can't say that she's as bad as the previous characters. With access to multiple infinites and a strong anti-air assist, you might think that she's pretty strong, but most players agree that this isn't the case. Chun-Li doesn't have many ways to attack a faraway opponent. Although she has very strong mobility tools in the form of her triple jump and air dash, she has to go on herself, meaning that there are no solid projectiles or long-range attacks for her to use. Chun also takes 6% more damage than the average character, and although this isn't that bad, it means that she can sometimes be badly hurt for making a simple mistake. Using her mobility tools to catch an aerial opponent like Storm or Iron Man isn't too hard in theory, but successfully converting a stray air hit in reality into meaningful damage is nigh impossible, and it means that her damage routes in the air are pretty mediocre. Chun's devastating air super from Marvel 1 has been removed, so it means that there's no way for her to have a satisfying conclusion to air combos. This also means that Chun heavily relies on assists to throw out significant damage or pressure, and if she's lost one or even both of her teammates, then there's not much that she can do here by herself. If you have a character who can stay in the air and throw out a quick move to catch her pressing a button, then it's going to be rough for her to keep up. Combos are also something that Chun-Li struggles with the most obvious example being her lightning leg super. In previous games, you could combo into this solo, but in Marvel 2, Chun-Li needs an assist to set this up. It's technically possible to do this super after a sweep and have a combo that way, but the enemy can tech roll here, leading Chun-Li to being punished. Her normals are also quite stubby, and this makes it challenging to open the enemy up with grounded normals. Chun's air normals are better in this regard, but in order to have maximum efficiency, she has to do them out of an instant air dash, and this can be quite tricky. Since she can't air dash upwards, all of these moves will whiff on characters who are above her, completely invalidating them in this situation. Even if she does land a hit, her damage isn't anything to write home about. I wouldn't say that it's horrible, but I don't think that it's worth it when you consider the amount of work you have to put in to land these attacks in the first place. Most characters in the game can do the same amount, if not more damage than she can for less effort, and if you're fighting against a high health character who can stay in the air pretty easily, then it's gonna be a nightmare. I mentioned this before, but Chun-Li actually does have infinites, so shouldn't these fix her issues involving combos? Sort of. Remember when I said that I'd cover Justin Wong's tier reasonings in the intro? Well, in his video, he says that Chun-Li could go up in the tier list if people start consistently doing her more advanced techniques, but because no one is actually doing them in real matches, he can't realistically put her higher. As far as I know, there aren't any active Marvel 2 players who can properly utilize all of Chun-Li's high execution techniques, probably because they're playing stronger characters like Magneto or even Dalsum. This means that Chun-Li actually has some hidden potential, and if she can be on an EVO winning team in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, then I have no doubts that an experienced Marvel 2 player can also show us all that she's better than we give her credit for. As the third Street Fighter character so far, Ryu has never been considered to be very powerful in Marvel 2, despite his never-ending journey to become stronger. Although his moveset and animations are immediately familiar to fighting game fans, his power levels are quite low, unfortunately. Much like the other characters so far, Ryu's damage and range are quite mediocre. In order to get satisfying damage, he has to use lots of meter, making him very resource intensive. Without meter, his damage output is nothing to write home about, and even low health characters will be okay being hit by one of his B&B combos. His range is even worse though, as these normals simply aren't going to cut it in a game where half the character roster can just quickly fly away. A common problem shooters have in this game is that due to their pushback, you can't do two crouching punches into a launcher. This makes hit confirming into one of these very tricky in the heat of the moment. As one of the only characters in this game to have a level 3, you'd think that Ryu would often do his devastating Shin Shoryuken, but much like his normals, this move also has major range issues. It's very hard to combo into this move as a result, so you normally see him ending combos with his Fireball Super if he has meter. Although Ryu can stall in the air with repeated fireballs, he lacks any practical mobility tools like a double jump or an air dash. This makes traversing around the screen to catch a fast opponent a bit of a headache, as you have to rely on assist to get the job done, rather than Ryu having the tools to do this himself. Even if he does land an air hit, he can't confirm into big damage by himself, so he relies on assist for this too. If Ryu is being zoned out by a character with strong keep away tools, he's forced to rush in and take risks to approach, and this is exactly the same issue that Dan runs into. Ryu's fireballs are actually quite large, which is really nice, but they're also slow, and if he gets predictable, he can easily be punished. This means that he lacks ways to contest zoning, and this leads to him getting mauled by many of the game's common characters. Even though his grounded wave dash isn't bad, it's not going to get him very far if he's forced to block a series of projectiles, so super jumping is his best bet. The only problem with this, however, is that due to his stubby normals, any character can easily avoid these sorts of attacks while he's in the air and they're on the ground. Finally, and this is something I said in my Marvel 3 video about Ryu's depiction in that game, he just lacks anything special that helps him stand out. Other shotos have higher damage, better assists, and even comic relief, so Ryu is just a little bit bland in Marvel 2 when compared to his Street Fighter friends. They can all provide unique strategies and support value on any team, and with Ryu's very basic toolkit, I struggle to see how he'd effectively be utilized at a high level. A general rule of thumb is that if you can think of something Ryu can do in this game, then I guarantee you that there's another character who can do it better. You can still definitely play and have a lot of fun with Ryu even in a tournament setting, but it's definitely easier said than done to win with him. As the only Wolverine to be featured in this video, Boneclaw Wolverine first appeared in the Fatal Attraction storyline from the 90s, and there admittedly isn't much information about him online. Getting rid of the adamantium claws in favor of his literal bones sounds super hardcore, so it's a shame that he's not much better. Although an old school player by the name of Joe Zaza has proven that the character can definitely be used effectively. Bone Wolverine's biggest drawback is his health. He takes 25% more damage than the average character, leading to easy touch of deaths for not much effort. As Wolverine has always been an offensive rushdown based character with zero long-range attacks, this means that he's forced to run in and smother the enemy with extended block strings and mix-ups. While this may sound great in theory, it means that if you make one mistake against an aware opponent, he's going to die. Many DHC routes involving common characters will be enough to either significantly damage or just kill him outright, so he's essentially made out of paper. This also means that he struggles against zoning, as chip damage can annihilate him over the course of the match if he's forced into a defensive position for too long. I suppose this is by design due to him purely being focused on rushdown, but it still doesn't help. If you don't have strong assists to bully the enemy with, then it can be really hard for Wolverine to approach the enemy. While Wolverine's ground mobility is definitely better than most characters we've covered so far, he does lack some crucial tools. Bone Wolverine cannot air dash, double jump, fly, or teleport, and while Adamantium Wolverine can use his speed up super to cover distance even faster than normal, Bone Wolverine can do no such thing. If you catch the enemy out of the air with a stray hit, you can't end in a super, which means that there's no way to DHC for more damage. This also means that if Wolverine has low health and you want to DHC out, you have to be on the ground. He also doesn't have any long-range aerial buttons to contest the enemy from a distance, so they're completely safe if they're far away, and as you can't call assists after super jumping, Wolverine has to fight them on his own until he hits the ground. It's not all bad though, as not only does he move quite fast in the air, he also has an angled dive kick, allowing him to quickly gain ground. Bone Wolverine only has two supers, Berserker Barrage X and Weapon X, and they both have slow startup. Although it's possible to combo into the former from a heavy Berserker Barrage, I don't think it's possible to combo into Weapon X without an assist. Because these supers are grounded only, it means that Bone Wolverine also has very limited DHC routes, as any enemy who's above him will be out of the way of both of his supers. Even if they're on the ground, it can be a challenge to DHC into either of these supers if the enemy decides to tech roll, and I had a hard time getting these to land in training mode with a bunch of different characters from a distance. If Wolverine is the final character in your DHC route and you're mid-screen, then the chances of his supers connecting are pretty low. Bone Wolverine's solo combos also aren't amazing. Don't get me wrong, they don't suck, and he even has infinites, so it's not all bad, but it's just that his regular, consistent combos are a bit underwhelming. It can be hard to get them started on enemies who are good at running away, but if you land a mid-screen combo, you can score some decent damage. Wolverine shines in the corner though, and if you get a good jump in, you can do some huge damage, but this isn't very likely to happen in a real match due to it requiring the enemy to just stand there and not even try to escape. Bone Wolverine is one of the game's glass cannon characters, as although he can do some really cool stuff when the stars align, he can just as easily be sent flying home for making a single mistake. He's not unusable, but him fighting against a lot of the characters is definitely an uphill battle. With With an undying love for his country, Captain America has been around for eons now, and it's also quite challenging to find information about him in Marvel 2 due to not many people playing or documenting him. He's got some unique mechanics though, so if you like characters who can stand out from the crowd, then you'll find a lot to enjoy here. In Justin Wong's tier list video, he has some pretty harsh words about Shield Slash and Charging Star, and I think I understand why now. The former is a projectile that doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and because Cap is throwing his shield, you have to manually retrieve it if you don't catch it on the way back. I'll discuss the implications of this later on, but it does hurt him more than it helps. Other than that, this is just kind of a nothing special move as it doesn't do anything particularly useful. Charging Star is a special move that advances forward, and you'd only want to use this in combos due to its slow speed. The move also has horrible recovery, so you can be punished quite easily for it if it's blocked, and even if the move does hit the opponent, it sends them flying away, forcing Captain America to start the process of approaching the enemy all over again. Giving up your positional advantage for a bit of damage simply isn't worth it, and it means that Captain America has a lackluster combo game. Cap's other special moves are Stars and Stripes, which is a pretty average DP, and Cartwheel. This move has no hitbox, but it does side switch, and while you can combine it with an assist to perform mix-ups, he's completely vulnerable during its animation. Captain America's mediocre special moves hurts his combo game a lot, and Justin even says that Captain America will pretty much just go for short super and not much else. If you lose the shield after throwing it out, Captain America is forced to fight with his bare hands, changing the properties of his normals and specials. A lot of his punches, for example, all look different, and Charging Star will now lose to fireballs without the shield. There are other changes to his frame data, combo routes, and damage output that are brought about by losing the shield, so you really have to dive in and learn all of the differences if you plan on playing as Captain America. Also, if the enemy really wants to, they can just kind of stay over the shield, preventing you from picking it up, and this can negatively affect Cap over the course of the match by essentially deleting his shield-related moves from the game. Although most fireballs in Marvel 2 are pretty low committal options that you can throw out when in neutral for some light zoning or ship damage, Shield Slash can introduce major changes to Captain America's game plan if it doesn't work out how you'd expect, with an example being that his shieldless punches do less damage. Having part of a character's toolkit change depending on whether or not one of their special moves misses sounds straight out of an anime fighting game, and despite it being a really fresh and unique idea, especially for the Marvel vs. Capcom series, it really affects him negatively. Captain America also isn't the fastest character in the game, just to put it lightly. He does have a double jump which can be used to throw enemies off his movement patterns, and this is actually really cool, but his speed overall isn't that great. It's pretty easy for characters who can fly around the screen to completely invalidate him, and since he can't fly, teleport, or air dash, he struggles a bit against aerial-focused characters. However, if you lose the shield, he actually becomes a bit faster, helping him a tiny bit in approaching the enemy. This system introduces a dynamic where you have to sacrifice damage for speed by losing the shield and vice versa, and it means that Captain America can't have his cake and eat it too. You can't have both solid damage and speed at the same time, so you're forced to decide which one you'd rather have in real time. This part of his game plan is really unique and I love it, but it doesn't help out that much in terms of competitive viability. In a game where many characters can be both fast and damaging, poor Captain America is held back by these parts of his gameplay strategy, but I salute you if you pick him and stick with him. First introduced in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Amingo is everyone's favorite cactus buddy, and he has one of my favorite designs in the whole game. With the unique character designs comes a unique set of tools, and as much as I hate to say it, they aren't very strong overall. Pour one out for your boy, Amingo bros. Due to him being thick and ridic, Amingo was pretty easy to attack with both projectiles from afar and physical hits from up close. Rushing him down with a quick character like Storm or Magneto is really easy, and this means that you could score meaningful damage without having to put in much effort. Zoning him out with a multitude of characters is also no challenge at all, so even the most mid-tier of zoners shouldn't find it too hard to keep him away. What makes this even worse is that Amingo has very limited mobility. I know I sound like a broken record by now, but say it with me everyone. Amingo can't fly, air dash, teleport, or double jump, so his offense is very linear and predictable. He has to call in an assist and jump in, praying that his next attack connects on the way down. You can try to use this special move, the Cactus Dash, as a weird air dash of sorts, but it's very committal, and whiffing it can get you punished. This all means that trying to approach the enemy, especially one who can take to the skies with ease, with Amingo is easier said than done. As a result of all this, Amingo is also super easy to lock down and force into a block string, preventing him from getting his offense going in the first place. He also can't do much on incoming either, and his large body leaves him open to all sorts of shenanigans in this situation. Amingo is also the very opposite of a team player, as none of his assists or DHC routes are very good. 2 of his assists spawn items that buff your defense or restore some of your red life if you touch them, and his other assist is his heavy Cactus Dash. The latter is probably the best assist as it can actually do multiple hits of damage, which is quite nice, but having the other 2 doesn't seem awful. I mean, it's not like you're that concerned with competition if you're playing Amingo and aren't a master with the character in the first place, so you might want to consider using these assists. Amingo also has two supers, with one of them being a hit grab. Despite this animation being absolute cinema, it's very impractical to land in an actual match due to its poor speed and low range, but you can combo into this solo. It's very hard, especially in a live match where a million things are happening at once, but if you have proper timing, you can definitely link some normals into the super. His other super is a vertical cactus strike, and because this move has awful horizontal range, finding a solid DHC route into this move is headache-inducing, especially when you're mid-screen. This means that it's very challenging to build a team around Amingo, and as he can't do a good job of supporting his teammates when he's in the back, his overall support value is pretty poor. Finally, Amingo struggles with making the enemy worry about taking big damage or being hit by a disgusting mix-up. He has an infinite, don't get me wrong, but this doesn't work on every character, and it can be hard to set it up in a real match. Aside from his damaging heavy normals, Amingo doesn't have many ways to land meaningful damage without utilizing his teammates, so he heavily relies on them for even the most basic of offensive techniques. 3 of his 5 special moves involve his cactus kids, and as they're grounded only, you can easily avoid them by jumping or flying away, and it's not like he can combo into them due to the startup. His cactus bounce is primarily used as a combo ender and it's not really seen anywhere else, so this leaves his cactus dash. You can use this move in regular combos and infinites, and if you land the heavy version, it actually does some really nice damage. The only problem is that despite covering some decent horizontal range, it struggles hard against vertical opponents, but it's not a bad move overall despite this. Amingo takes a lot of hard work and patience to get going, but if you manage to win with him, you'll officially be known the world over as Mr. Steal Your Girl for achieving victory with such an awesome yet low-tier character. As one of the more obscure characters in the game, Hayato is a space ranger with a big anime sword, and he's one of my favorite low-tier characters in the entirety of Marvel 2. He has some unique combos and character-specific mechanics, but even with all of that, he still pales in comparison to most characters in the game. Hayato likes to advance in neutral with his sword normals, as this combines forward movement with a moving hitbox. This sounds pretty good on paper, but many of Hayato's moves are slow and committal, and if he doesn't space them properly, he can take a really big beating. If the enemy has access to a quick team super, they can easily nuke him back to his own game before he even gets going, so when using Hayato and using these moves, you have to play very patiently. Many of his sword normals also don't have disjointed hitboxes, so if you want to safely frustrate the enemy with pokes from a cautious distance, think again. One of Hayato's unique qualities are his extended attack strings. These are sort of like wreckers, and you can combine directional inputs with multiple button presses to get these moves out. Some of these strings even have overheads, so it's definitely possible to catch the enemy off guard if they don't know the matchup, but they can lead to dire consequences if you incorrectly use them against an experienced opponent. Figuring out which string to use in certain situations is important, as you absolutely want to avoid being punished for throwing one of these out. Unlike many of the characters we've covered so far, Hayato actually has some nice DHC potential in both mid-screen and the corner, and although the DHCs can be a bit inconsistent, they're not too bad overall, so I'll just focus on his assists. One weird property that his alpha and gamma assists have is that no matter where you are on the screen when you activate them, Hayato will spawn in at a full screen distance. I have no clue why this happens, and it means that comboing into them can be a bit finicky. The first one has a nice amount of distance, and the damage isn't bad too, but it's fairly standard overall. If the other one looks the exact same, it's actually because it is, but it changes your alpha counter and team super. If you want a DP alpha counter and a projectile-based team super, go with this assist instead. He also has a close range anti-air assist, but this has more startup than a lot of the other anti-air assists in the game, which means that characters who are rushing you down from the skies can often smack him out of the way. I'm sure you could definitely find a use for the DP assist despite its startup, and while I wouldn't say that it's bad, I also don't think that it's amazing. Hayato is also very meter dependent, so pairing him up with characters who also need lots of meter simply doesn't work unless you have a way to quickly build it. One of his most important supers is Hyperfield, as this lets you do free supers for the next 8 seconds if it connects. This means that Hayato will be using a lot of supers over the course of the game, and because he doesn't build meter very quickly by himself, he likes to hog resources. If you're playing as Hayato, I recommend building a team around him that can generate meter quickly via assists and quick buttons, and if you don't, he'll end up being a bit of a liability on the team. If you're about to win and you need a strong super to close out a combo, Hayato has a Raging Demon level 3. This is a hit grab, so you can combo into it, but it's very expensive, so be careful not to miss. Without meter, much of Hayato's potential damage output is squandered, as many of his specials and normals naturally link into his supers. So meter to Hayato is like oxygen to humans, or being goaded to Marvel rivals. Morrigan is one of Capcom's most iconic and beloved fighting game characters, and although she makes me rip my hair out in frustration every day in Marvel 3, she's thankfully much less frustrating to deal with in Marvel 2. With lots of unique movement options and some dated sprite art, Morrigan is actually really cool in this game. As most big combos in this game end in a super for big damage, it's a shame that Morrigan doesn't do this very well. Justin Wong even says that the only thing holding Morrigan back from being greater is that she doesn't do enough damage. As comboing into a Solar Razor and Darkness Illusion supers without an assist is too hard and inconsistent, especially mid-screen, she lacks easy access to satisfying combo resolutions, and this hurts her damage output quite a bit. It's definitely possible to combo into Silhouette Blade, but as this knocks them upwards, you most likely can't get the full super to come out and then DHC, as they'll be out of the way of the following super. This means that Morrigan solo combos will generally be meterless, and although the damage here is far from bad, it still leaves a bit to be desired. Unlike most characters covered so far, she can use her many flight patterns to chase down opponents who are in the air, helping Morrigan to land some air normals and maybe even a combo if you're so inclined. Her only air super is Darkness Illusion, so you can say goodbye to super confirms from this range as many assists won't connect from here, especially if you've already super jumped. Her flight and air dash patterns aren't mind-blowing, but they're really nice to have, as they allow her to somewhat keep up with faster characters in the game like Storm or Magneto, so good job, Morrigan. Support value isn't one of Morrigan's greatest assets, and while she can definitely provide some value to your team via her straightforward DHC options, many characters in the game can do what she does, but better. 2 of her assists are fireballs, but they do have different alpha counters and team supers associated with them, but these are both kind of invalidated by her DP assist. This is considered to be Morrigan's strongest assist, but it's still not amazing in the grand scheme of things. It does have similar speed and priority to Psylocke's infamous DP assist, but as this one doesn't lead to a hard knockdown, it has much less combo potential. Another character that has a much better DP assist is Cyclops, as Gene Splice hits multiple times and allows for easier hit confirms and combo extensions. Ironically, it's also quite good at allowing Morrigan to combo into her air supers, fixing the aforementioned problem. This may all sound good, but it means that Morrigan ends up playing second fiddle to characters who have DP assists and horizontal DHC options. Iron Man, Storm, Sentinel, Cyclops, Doctor Doom, and even Juggernaut can all bring the hurt this way, and the cherry on top is that pretty much all of these characters are considered to be stronger than Morrigan in the first place. Overall, I wouldn't say that Morrigan is a liability in terms of support value, but I do believe that many other characters' assists and DHC routes are better than hers. Maybe this is because I've been brainwashed by Marvel 3, but as Morrigan is a character who can combine aerial movement with angled projectiles, you would think she would have a stronger zoning game. As her infamous Astral Vision super isn't in Marvel 2, she has no way to increase the amount of fireballs she can put on screen when zoning in this game, and this means that characters with strong aerial mobility can just often avoid her. If your character has a strong air super, they can quickly snipe her throwing a fireball if they anticipate it, and the same can be done with quick team supers. Morrigan also takes 18% more damage than the average character, and with how damaging combos can be in this game in general, she can go down in an instant if she's dealt a crappy hand. Even though I've spent the last 3 or so minutes dooming, I still don't think Morrigan is that bad, and she can absolutely be played effectively if you put the time in. The second Darkstalker in this video is a Catgirl pop star with blue hair who also lives as a nun despite presenting herself as naked to the public, so Felicia has pretty much the craziest backstory in maybe the whole game. Interestingly, Felicia's only weakness on her Super Combo wiki page is low health, but I knew that there had to be more, so after doing some digging I found the following. Outside of her devastating kitty super loops in the corner where she can melt your life bar with repeated OTG supers, Felicia's damage isn't anything too crazy. Her basic solo mid-screen combos aren't anything special, as although they're far from being bad, their damage output is just kind of average. A lot of the game's stronger characters can perform higher damage combos for the same or maybe even less amount of work, and as you have to start a solo ground combo with one of Felicia's stubby normals, this can be a bit challenging with her. Her solid air heavy normals are great at starting combos however, but as they don't have much range and hit downwards, they're going to miss against enemies who are above her. Confirming stray air hits into meaningful damage can be done with her delta kick, but the enemy can easily tech roll after hitting the ground, escaping further Felicia pressure. This means that her combos are mostly grounded, so you have to build a team that can lock the enemy down and allow Felicia to go for a combo starter. Felicia simply doesn't get many opportunities to start devastating combos as a result of her light normals not covering much ground, and although her back heavy kick has good range and links into her dancing flash super, it can be punished on whiffs, so be very careful. Many of her best combos also only work in the corner against a grounded opponent, and if they do so much as jump away for example, much of her combo potential is gone. After messing around with Felicia in training mode and seeing what people can do with her combo routes online, they don't seem bad at all, just a bit hard to get going. Much like Wolverine, Felicia is a fast rushdown character, and while she does have a surprising amount of speed on the ground and in the air, it's very hard for her to contest the other fast characters, especially the ones who can fly. Felicia can't fly, air dash, teleport, or double jump, so you just have to super jump and pray that you can land a hit. When you're on the ground and they're in the air, she has no attacks that allow you to strike them, so you're forced to follow them up, and this can give them mutual control if you don't find a way to start your offense. Being forced to play their game with Felicia can happen often, and as she takes 12% more damage than the average character, taking chip damage and some little combos here and there can lead to big consequences later on in the match. Additionally, Felicia has no consistent ways to get the enemy away from her. If she's being rushed down by a character who possesses strong aerial control, you've got to try and swat them away with a launcher or a crouching heavy punch, but this isn't very consistent. Although Felicia has some solid DHC options from up close, her assists pale in comparison. Cat Spike, Delta Kick, and Sand Splash are her options, and if it were up to me, I'd go with Sand Splash. It's a projectile that travels across the ground, and although it has less range than you'd think, it can still help out somewhat in neutral and in combos. Cat Spike will never connect from far away, so this is a close range only assist, and it doesn't do too much to be honest. Felicia jumps out, hits the opponent once, and then leaves, so there's not much that this move brings to the table in terms of combos or mix-ups, and I also can't imagine that this move would be great for block strings due to its startup. Delta Kick startup could be used for avoiding grounded strikes, but as this move also only hits once from a distance, its downward trajectory means it'll miss on aerial opponents who are above it. Overall, these assists aren't that great, and while I'm sure it's possible to incorporate them into solid combos in theory, I don't think that this is necessarily practical. In my view, the cons of her assists definitely outweigh the pros, so you have to be very calm when deciding to call her in. After having his mind, body, and soul taken over by an alien symbiote, Eddie Brock decided to spend the rest of his life being a low mid-tier in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and although he has some of the coolest looking animations in the whole game, his strength isn't as impressive. Despite not looking like a big body, Venom kind of is, and his wide hurt box leaves him open to being attacked. Enemies who focus on a long-range projectile-based form of offense will find it very easy to hit him, even from full screen away, and his large frame also leaves him open to being hit by long-range supers. Enemies who decide to stay away from Venom won't feel pressured at all by his screen presence, as he can't do anything to catch them when they're at super jump height. But it gets even worse, because Venom also struggles at dealing with enemies who are rushing him down. It's quite common for Venom to be locked down in extended block strings and tricky mix-ups, and there's not much he can do on his own to escape these. Many of his attacks are also unsafe, especially his specials. Having moves like Venom Fang or Venom Rush be blocked or avoided essentially guarantees that he'll be hit with a fat punish, so when using these moves you have to be very careful. Landing them also doesn't lead to huge rewards unless you combo into a super, but as their startup makes this a challenge, the risk-reward in situations like this is mostly not in Venom's favor. This means that Venom has to overly rely on his assist to help him clear neutral and start combos, as there's really not much he can do by himself here. Much like the previous characters, Venom's support value is mostly through DHC routes. His assists are his special moves and his launcher, and this last one is awful. Venom Rush is alright as a confusion tool, and while it can lead to pressure strings, it has really noticeable recovery. Venom Fang, however, is his best assist overall, as it comes out quickly and it hits the opponent multiple times, but it's also pretty standard and doesn't have any special properties. Overall, Venom lacks ways to meaningfully help out his partners in a real match via his assists. Thankfully, his supers are much better for this. Although comboing into Venom Web solo is challenging due to the move startup, it has an amazing DHC route and it also looks awesome. This move catches enemies if they're anywhere in his web during the startup animation, and if it hits, it does some nice damage. Venom also leaps forward if it connects, helping it to have some consistency when at mid-screen. If you need something faster, however, Deathbite has you covered. This move covers a lot of horizontal range, and it also does some nice damage, but it doesn't do anything in the corner due to the attack mostly being off-screen. In this situation in the corner, Venom Web is your only option, so I hope that your team can route into it. Finally, Venom is just too straightforward and linear to be considered a true threat. If your opponent is familiar with Venom and they know the matchup well, it's almost impossible to surprise them with a sneak attack or something like that. He simply can't confuse the opponent with anything really ambiguous, and it means that he can be extremely predictable, which can be an instant death sentence in a game like this. If the enemy knows you're going to go for a certain special move or a super, they can easily bait it out, and because of how much recovery his moves have overall, it's probably going to be lights out for Venom in this situation. However, his beginner-friendly and pretty straightforward game plan makes him very accessible for new players, and he can help them learn the game's fundamentals. All of this isn't to say that Venom can't be used effectively by experienced players, because he absolutely can. It's just that a bulk of the work they put in will be through smart assist calls and optimal team synergy. You can give Venom a strong DP assist or a combo extender tool, but I personally think that providing him with an assist that helps him perform a scary reset or mix-up can go a long way in making him intimidating. Even with all of his flaws, I think Venom is really fun though, so try him out. Sanson is the descendant of the protagonist from the arcade game of the same name, and a monkey girl is actually a pretty cool idea for a Marvel vs. Capcom character. You don't see Sanson very often nowadays due to her relative obscurity, and although she does have some strong options, we're legally mandated to focus on the negatives in this video, so here we go. Sanson has the same health value as Morrigan, meaning that she takes 18% more damage than the average character. This is already bad enough, but it ties into her lack of safe options from a distance. As most of her normals are stubby, Sanson is forced to use her heavy normals to poke the enemy. Her standing heavy punch is actually super good, but her other buttons lag behind this a bit, and it means that she overly relies on these specific normals rather than having a more well-rounded poking game. Alert opponents can quickly catch on to her poking strategies if the Sansan player becomes complacent, and many of the common characters who you see at high level in this game can quickly beat her out. Also, her hurtboxes move forward during these animations, helping enemies who are further out to smack her without them repeatedly moving forward. Instead of having traditional mobility tools like a double jump or a flight for example, Sansan likes to run across the screen itself. She can combine this with her air dash to remain mobile but also confusing, as she's very good at throwing the enemy off their potential movement patterns. Now look, don't get me wrong, she's still gonna get rushed down pretty easily by an advanced Storm or Magneto player, especially with assists in the back to cover them, but these tools can especially help her out in lower to intermediate level play against other low to mid tier characters. More common characters who can fly can effectively stay close to her at all times, however, and this means that Sansan's gonna have trouble getting them away from her without a strong anti-air assist to help back her up. In my view, Sansan's one-of-a-kind movement options are what helps separate her from the rest of the character roster, but these also aren't broken. If these techniques were way too strong and they let Sansan effortlessly evade even the most dominating of characters, then we'd see her go up in the tier list by a long shot, but I like how this isn't the case. These tools give her something powerful and unique, while also not making her overtuned. If you have an assist that allows Sansan to combo into one of her supers, you can expect to have a really nice ending to your combo. If you don't, however, then 2 of her 3 supers cannot be comboed into. The only super she can combo into by herself is Tenshi, and while this move is far from being bad, it can sometimes drop if it's not incorporated into the combo properly. Her other supers, Monkey King and Pow, are also really cool, but again, you need an assist to combo into each of these. You can use the former when in mid-screen by yourself as an install, and the Fire Breath can do some decent chip damage. However, you can't block when in this mode, so if the opponent knows the matchup, they can use moves with Super Armor or just something like Air Hyper Viper Beam to just destroy Sansan's offense. Her Pow Super turns the enemy into a random fruit and then she eats them. The fruit itself comes in 3 different forms, but this is just a cosmetic change, so the damage is fixed thankfully. This move is nice as a combo ender in certain DHC routes when it's guaranteed to connect, but going for this move raw in neutral requires some major balls and I don't recommend it as Sansan can easily be punished this way if it misses. This final point is just my own personal opinion, but it seems that after the thrill wears off, you realize that other characters have similar yet better tools compared to the ones that she has. Sansan has a solid DP assist, but so does Cyclops. She has good movement, but Sentinel does too. Her strategy of frustrating the enemy with solid normals can also be performed by Psylocke, and her solo combo damage is comparable to many characters in the game. For as solid as she is, I rarely see Sansan be played in the current era of Marvel 2, especially not at a high level, and I believe that many of her fundamental tools just get outclassed by many of the stronger characters. Sansan can definitely bring solid support value to your team, and she even gets better if the enemy is really unfamiliar with the matchup, but you're sacrificing competitive viability for uniqueness by picking her, and to be perfectly honest, I don't think this is inherently a bad thing. If you like distinctive characters with special tools but also defined weaknesses that prevent them from being super top tier, definitely try Sansan out, but if you're playing Marvel 2 to win, you might want to go with someone else. M. Bison is perhaps the most evil villain in the Street Fighter series, and he's considered to be the OG fighting game antagonist as a result. Much to my dismay, finding reliable information about Bison online was a real struggle, but I did the best that I could. A very unique problem is that due to Bison's inputs, it's not hard to accidentally get moves out that you didn't want to do, and if you've played Bison before, then you know the pain of getting a Devil's Reverse or head press mid-combo. Much like in Street Fighter, Bison's special moves that send him upwards require a down to up charge motion, so if you hold down to start a combo with low normals and then press up and a button to continue after the launcher, the game can sometimes give you a charge move if you aren't perfect with your inputs. This may seem relatively minor, but Justin Wong actually lists it as one of the reasons why he puts Bison in the OK tier category. If you land a hit in this game, you need to make sure that you don't make any mistakes, and with how scrambly Marvel 2 can get when tensions are high, it means that Bison generally drops combos more than other characters. Bison's lack of mobility options means that he struggles to open enemies up, and although he does have a 4-way teleport, this is kind of slow. You can teleport to 4 different directions, even when in the air, and while this seems really strong on the surface, there's not much that he can do out of it. Bison's primary way of getting in is to super jump and come down with a button, but there's no way to get a mix-up out of this unfortunately. His flight is also very average, and it means that any character with a strong anti-air or air super can easily smack him out of it. Unlike a character like Sentinel who can bully even the most experienced of players with a combination of his flight and god-like air buttons, Bison is nowhere close to being this strong in the air, and it means that even defending against him isn't that hard. None of his jumping light attacks are particularly useful in neutral as a result of their poor range, so you'd want to use his jumping heavy kick in this situation. The move does a nice chunk of damage and it can start some really nice solo combos, but as it hits downwards, enemies who are above Bison can easily avoid it. Jumping heavy punch can also be used to attempt cross-ups, but like his air light normals, this move also lacks range, so it's probably going to miss if you attempt to space it out. Justin Wong also states that playing Bison doesn't provide much utility to your team overall, and after looking at his assists, I see why. Bison's DHC routes are actually pretty good, and having access to damage like this at the end of your combo is pretty strong, so he's a good character to have in the back if you like high damage DHCs. Out of his 3 assists, Psychofield is easily his best, as not only is it fast, but you can also call in another assist while this move is still on screen. When combined with characters like Sentinel or Doctor Doom, you can do some really dirty block strings, so definitely use this assist with Bison. His other assists are Psycho Shot and Scissor Kick. The former is an angled projectile that can be used for guard break setups on incoming, but it's not as good as Psychofield when in neutral. Scissor Kick sends Bison forward, which leaves him open to being punished, but it can set up for OTG combos. For as good as Psychofield is, Bison's assist overall can be outclassed by many other characters in the game. For example, if you really want a strong anti-air assist, Cyclops, Captain Commando, Cable, and Psylocke have you covered. For as solid as Bison is in low mid-tier matches, he struggles against the higher tier characters a lot, as they can do what he does but better. With all of that being said, there's almost nothing as satisfying in Marvel 2 as doing Bison's B&B, so I still recommend trying him out despite the character's flaws. As the most abstract-looking character in the whole game, Shuma-Gorath is a familiar figure to Marvel vs. Capcom fans, but I'm not sure that I'd say he's very recognizable to a mainstream audience. He's pretty cool though, and there are a lot of unique qualities that he brings to the table. For starters, let's begin by talking about something specific to Shuma-Gorath. Shuma's assists aren't that special when looking at the game overall, and while they can be used effectively, his DHC potential is next level. These supers may seem very simple on the surface, but Skullgirl's creator Mike Z discovered some amazing tech with this move a long time ago. See how the bombs get stuck to the enemy after Mystic Stare connects? These explode after a few seconds pass, and the explosion can lead to extra damage toward the end of a combo. But it gets even better, because due to a glitch in the game's code, if you DHC Shuma out when the bombs are active, they will automatically explode and become unblockable. This can lead to insane damage, and because the enemy can't block, you can bully them for defending correctly. This is obviously super strong, and it's fantastic for Shuma players that the character has something like that. Speaking of unblockables, Shuma's level 3 super, Chaos Dimension, possesses this quality. Performing it activates an install, and attacking the enemy with a heavy normal will trigger it. Locking the enemy down in a block string is a great way to land this move, and it's also great at closing out a match due to its damage. Shuma-Gorath is also a charge character, which is very unique in Marvel vs. Capcom. He only has 3 moves that don't require a charge, and these are a command grab and his supers. Not having immediate access to his main special moves when attempting to rush the enemy down or run away hurts him a lot, however, and it means that Shuma relies on his normals and assists for fast attacks. Shuma's light normals don't have much range, so it can be hard to use a low-risk normal to tag an enemy who's flying around the screen, and if he makes a mistake, he takes 12% more damage than the average character. His standing heavy normals do have a lot of range, which is quite nice, but they leave him open to punishment, so they have to be used with caution. Standing heavy kick's really long animation does make it great for getting a charge motion in, helping him to combo into specials, so you'd want to use this move when going for big combos. Mystic Smash provides a way for Shuma to close the gap and have a hitbox, but the committal nature of this move also leaves him vulnerable, and the mandatory charge motion means he can't use it whenever he wants to. Devitalization, if I'm not missing something, doesn't seem very strong. The range isn't great, and it doesn't do that much damage, as you can't combo into or out of it. The move just seemingly has no combo potential, so it's hard to recommend. Shuma-Gorath also has a pretty cool combo game when looking at him overall, and trying to balance regular normals with charge motions is an interesting dynamic. His damage output is also quite nice for a low mid-tier character, and ending combos with a super feels really satisfying. One of Shuma's great tactics is to intentionally drop an air combo and then do a really quick air grab. This does big damage and recovers some of your health, so it's a fantastic strategy. With how tricky it is to tech throws in this game, it's very reliable, and you see Shuma players go for it a lot in real matches. It's also possible to combo out of his level 3, and although this does require a lot of meter, it can lead to devastating damage. Shuma also has infinites, and these can be performed on many characters in the game, so he does reward high execution and good situational awareness. Shuma-Gorath, and you can kind of tell this just by looking at him, is very unorthodox and weird, but in a good way. If you master his unconventional qualities, the rewards can be quite high, which is really nice. His unblockable DHC also leads to many types of combo routes for much of the cast, and this alone can earn him a valued position on any team. Zangief is the grappler of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and he focuses on powerful command grabs as a result. This is quite the unique strategy for a series like Marvel, and it can lead to a high-risk, high-reward game plan. Although Zangief can do a pretty good job of walking the enemy down in a grounded series like Street Fighter, this element of his character archetype suffers heavily in Marvel. Many characters can easily outrun him in both the air and the ground, and his lackluster walk speed and forward dash doesn't help out with this. His dash in particular seems to be one of the slowest in the game, and while it can lead to you biting the enemy if you do it up close, its mobility isn't anything amazing. Zangief also can't air dash, fly, teleport, double jump, etc., so he heavily struggles in the air, which kinda makes sense given his character. It might look like Zangief has absolutely no mobility at all, but he does have one trick up his sleeve that can lead to devastating results if used correctly. Unlike Street Fighter, Zangief in Marvel has an anti-air grab, and it's actually pretty solid. It does a nice chunk of damage, and it can be used against opponents who like to frequently normal jump. When combined with assist, this move can be deadly, and if the enemy stays on the ground to avoid it, they risk being hit with an SPD. The psychological aspects and the mind games provided by Zangief's ground air mix-up is only strengthened with assists, and it leads to him being a very satisfying character when things work out. Also, if the grab misses, you can actually act out of it, so doing the move into a body splash is a great way to go for cross-up combo starters. But it's not just specials, because Zangief also has some other interesting moves. If you count the follow-up attacks out of his forward dash, then Zangief has 11 command normals. That's an absurd amount, and I don't think that any other character in the game, or maybe even the series, has this many. Some of these, like the air elbow drop and the double knee drop, can only be done in the air, whereas the iron claw and the back drop are grounded only, and these provide Zangief players with different types of moves depending on the situation. Zangief also has 7 special moves, and these will feel right at home for Street Fighter players. He also has 4 supers, including a devastating level 3, although this move doesn't have much range. His specials and supers are all well and good, but I want to talk about this one for a moment. Mech Zangief is his install, and it provides him with Vodka Fire, a brand new special move. This means that Zangief now has a projectile, and it can allow players to do some light zoning, particularly with assists in the back. He also has a brand new super, the Siberian Blizzard. This move has little to no horizontal range, but I suppose that it could be used as an anti-air of sorts. He also has access to this move in regular Zangief form if you team super, and routes like this can lead to massive damage, especially in the corner. Zangief's first assist is his double lariat, and this can be used in theory to get the enemy off you or to land a block string. It's pretty standard however, and his 2 other assists are much more interesting. These are both command grabs, and they each have different uses. If you stay above them and quickly switch sides with someone like Sentinel, this assist can scoop them up off the ground, but if they like to jump a lot, you can spam the anti-air assist to make them regret holding up. The anti-air assist is my favorite of the bunch because of how unique it is, as well as its tendency to lead to resets. You can put the fear of Geef into the opponent by making liberal use of this assist, and it can decimate health bars in the blink of an eye. Okay, don't get me wrong, Zangief on his own doesn't stand a chance against any top tier character who can easily zone him out, but he can work quite well in low to mid tier categories, and players like Mugai from Japan make Zangief look broken, so definitely check this guy out on YouTube if you'd like to see more. Overall, Zangief is a really fun and well-made character, and I quite like using him a lot in casual sets, so if you like grapplers and other fighting games, definitely try him out here in Marvel. As the highest placing Mega Man character in the video, Tronbon can be used to great effect by players of all skill levels, and while she does have some definitive weaknesses that prevent her from being truly top tier, there are also some really good qualities that she brings to the table. You can't make a Marvel 2 video that features Tron and not talk about his support value, and we'll get into why in a bit. Tron has 2 supers, and the short range of Lunch Rush combined with the startup of King Kobun means that DHCs, especially from far away, can be a bit tricky. However, if you manage to find a consistent route into Lunch Rush, you can do some really big damage, so it's not at all bad. 2 of Tron's assists are also nothing special. She has a command grab and good star fire for an anti-air, but her 3rd assist takes the cake. This projectile move looks simple on the surface, but it has 3 hits of unscaled damage. If all 3 hits connect, you can clearly see that this move is monstrous. Using this assist to start combos is an essential part of any team with Tron on it, and as the 3rd ring has somewhat of a delay, it can be used for some really weird mind games. This assist's only issue is its range, but with potential damage and pressure like this, I think it's not that big of a deal, so it's pretty good. One unique quality about Tron is that she's a big body but in terms of width. A lot of the taller characters are left open to zoning and rushdown due to their verticality, but Tron is around the average height for characters in the game, so similar to Lamingo, her large horizontal frame is what leaves her open. Tron also doesn't have many long-range options, so you can rely on her air dash to get in. This isn't as fast as some of the other air dashes in the game, but it gets the job done, and you can also move forward on the ground and in the air with her Bond Strike if you want an offensive mobility technique. Beacon Bomb and Kobun Launch are her other special moves, and these leave Tron open during their lengthy startup animations. These moves can definitely lead to solid damage if they land, and I'll show why later, but you can't throw them out willy-nilly. Combining Tron's mobility tools with her assist is crucial for avoiding punishment, as trying to recklessly rush in and play Tron solo is a surefire way to get her smacked. Unlike most characters I've covered so far, Tron has a really good amount of health. She takes 7% less damage than the average character, helping her to survive over extended periods of time. Taking Tron out via chip damage over the course of the match is possible, but this will take a while, especially if she's super jumping out of the way. If the stars align and you manage to get in at just the right angle, Tron also has a really easy infinite in the corner. This combo is very consistent, and it can lead to a dead character, so it helps her keep up with the higher tier characters. Outside of Infinites, Tron finds it a bit hard to land an initial hit due to her lack of long-range tools, but when she gets in, she can bring a world of hurt. Generally speaking, Tron's combos are most effective when you start them via a jump-in attack, as these provide you with enough hit stun to dash in and link some normals before a special, super, or launcher. For as solid as these combos are in terms of damage, they're also quite short and they don't build you a lot of meter, but they're still certainly not bad, especially for an OK tier character like Tron. Tron may struggle a lot against complex zoning or rushdown by herself, but when partnered up with strong assist, she's really not that bad. Look, I'm not saying she's top tier, but you could do a lot worse, and I think that she's a well-designed character. Responsible for killing your favorite MCU character by snapping his fingers together, Thanos aims to bring the hurt in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and while he may be very intimidating in his source material, he's not considered to be amazing in this game. Thanos is a common pick in low to mid-tier matches though, and he has a lot of awesome setups that he can do with his moves. For starters, Thanos doesn't have a forward dash, instead he has a KOF style run. This helps to set him apart from the other characters in the game as they simply don't have an option like this, and it means that covering ground with Thanos is pretty easy, at least in theory. He struggles with air mobility though, as you pretty much just have to rely on normal and super jumps with assist to get in. He can use his air special move as a pseudo air dash, but this leaves him open during the recovery, so I wouldn't recommend frequent use. Like Tron, Thanos' frame also leaves him open to attacks, especially from afar, and it's not too hard to lock him down from full screen if he's not calling in his assist right. It's not all bad though, as he can do major damage when he manages to land a hit. And speaking of damage, he only has 2 special moves, including the infamous bubble that traps the enemy in place, but his supers are where Thanos really shines. There are 4 supers in his moveset, and they each have different strategies and effective ranges. Gauntlet Power is good in the middle of a combo or DHC string, Gauntlet Soul is good for catching enemies who are up in the air, Gauntlet Reality is good for trapping enemies in place, and Gauntlet Space is really good for chip damage. These supers allow Thanos to have many options that specialize in different qualities, allowing him to do multiple styles of attacks in different situations, instead of having one move that just does everything. Going back to the bubble for a moment, this move allows every character in the game to extend combos with relative ease, and it can even be used to combo into big damage supers. Having a projectile that temporarily disables the opponent's movement is terrifying, and don't even get me started on resets. This assist is easily Thanos' best as it combines a large projectile with intimidation factor. If you get smacked by another projectile assist in neutral from another character for example, the result won't be that bad, and you can definitely go on to live another day, but Thanos' one puts the fear of being stunned into the opponent. His other assists are Titan Crush and Launcher. Titan Crush may not seem bad as a sort of get-off-me tool, but the move has no invincibility, and as Thanos himself is the attack, meaning he's the hitbox, it leaves him open. I don't think I've ever seen a Thanos player use these 2 assists before over the bubble, as the benefits provided by the bubble are simply too good to pass up on. Thanos is also quite the versatile character, as if you partner him with assists that allow him to rush down and stay close to the enemy, he can bully the opponent with his normals and supers, but if you prefer to run away, assists that keep the enemy out go hand in hand with his heavy normals, as these moves have solid range. Blackheart, Doctor Doom, Sentinel, and Iron Man instantly come to mind with their keep out assists, and Ken, Cyclops, or just about any other character with strong DP assists are really good from up close. Thanos can be a real pain to pin down if he's running in or running away effectively, and this versatility allows for freedom of expression when using him, as every player can just adopt their own playstyle. Overall, Thanos is a solid pick for players of just about all skill levels, and while he may seem really simple at a first glance, his skill ceiling can be really high. As one of the most simple and beginner-friendly characters in the whole game, Juggernaut is infamous for his extremely high damage output and power-up glitch, which allows him to do even more damage than normal. Aside from having the potential to wipe out entire teams from the face of the earth with well-timed supers, he doesn't have anything amazing. Juggernaut is quite possibly the largest character in the game, along with Sentinel, and this leaves him open to all sorts of shenanigans. High-low mix-ups, instant overheads, guard break setups, and even basic zoning can all give Juggernaut lots of trouble. Thankfully, his high health lets him survive longer than the average character, helping him to potentially score a comeback with a devastating combo, but this is never guaranteed, especially against characters who can fly away. When the opponent lands a hit on Juggernaut, the chance of them dropping the combo is very low if they account for his weight. This also ties into issues with mobility and recovery. Juggernaut is a slow and large behemoth, so he struggles to quickly gain ground and control the horizontal space in front of him. Earthquake Punch can be used as a series of mid-range projectiles, but this move is slow, so don't get predictable. If Juggernaut whiffs a normal or god forbid a special move, he can expect to be punished due to his huge amount of recovery frames, and this leads to an even more extreme version of Zangief's high-risk, high-reward strategy. When Juggernaut lands a combo, it's lights out for the opponent, but this can also go the other way. Juggernaut is also reliant on meter to close out combos, and while his damage is still pretty good without it, having meter allows for even more damaging combos and whiff punishment. Putting him on a team that can't quickly generate meter will hold him back somewhat, and he also struggles to build meter on his own. A very common strategy to build meter in Marvel 2 is to super jump and spam a quick air button, with Cyclops being the prime example here with his air heavy kick. Juggernaut has nothing like this though, as all of his buttons are really slow, so it means that you'll essentially be at a permanent meter disadvantage when you have him out by himself. Using team supers for massive punishment is also a common Juggernaut strategy, and you obviously can't do this unless you have at least 2 bars of meter, but this is most effective when spending 3 to get every character on your team involved. Not being able to do this when Juggernaut is on point or in the back can leave a lot of potential damage on the table, and this can be the difference between victory and defeat in a close game. Juggernaut also struggles when on defense. He has 1 hit of super armor, which is admittedly very nice, but this does lose to multi-hitting attacks. Against rushdown characters, he also doesn't have many quick or safe special moves to swat the enemy away with, and while his launcher and light Juggernaut punch can be used in these situations, they do carry a lot of risk because of their recovery. His body press is good due to it being an overhead, even when as an assist mind you, but the risk reward here is never in Juggernaut's favour. His super is also death on block, so I hope you have meter to DHC out. All of this means that Juggernaut struggles to keep up with characters who are either rushing him down or running away, as the only low committal technique he has is to throw out a light punch and see whether he can hit confirm into something big from it. Light punch is also Juggernaut's best poke and pressure tool, and this actually isn't too bad. It's not all bad though, as Juggernaut's simplicity ensures that you'll never drop a combo. If you like characters who have a hard time getting in but do absolutely insane damage when they do, Juggernaut should be right up your alley. Marrow is one of the most obscure characters in the whole game, and she's probably just as forgotten about now as she was back in 2000 by the mainstream comic book audience. She has a nice mix of rushdown, zoning, and movement tools, but she has major weaknesses that prevent her from being high tier. Marrow's biggest flaw is arguably her damage output. She simply doesn't hit very hard on her own, and it means that even low health characters will be fine when eating one of her combos, whether you're doing a ground combo or a magic series after her launcher. Marrow's solo combos are also quite short, and it means that she also doesn't build meter when doing them, preventing her from being great at fueling her teammates with resources. It's definitely possible to combo into a Stinger Bone super, but this type of damage is easily achievable by many other characters without even using any meter. This super is also only accessible on the ground, meaning that she lacks meaningful resolutions to her air combos. None of Marrow's normals do big damage either, and most of them are very average in terms of range, damage, and speed. This means that without assists, it can be pretty tricky trying to find openings in neutral, and while her Bone Burst super is good for chip damage, its slow startup makes it impossible to use as a combo tool. Moving on from normals and supers, let's now focus on Marrow's special moves. She has 4 of them, and while they all look sick, only one of them is truly good. Boomerang is Marrow's projectile, and it's very solid at controlling various angles in front of her. She can also perform this move when in the air at multiple angles, and it can lock the opponent in place, making it a reliable way to stop them from advancing. All in all, this is a very solid move, especially for a low mid-tier character. Towering Spine is Marrow's primary anti-air, and despite it looking like a DP, treating it like one is suicide. There's a big hurt box in the middle, and this leaves Marrow open to moves with more priority, as well as ranged attacks. It also has slow startup, so you can't do it on reaction to the enemy's quick air buttons. Ride and Slash is perhaps my favorite special move of hers in terms of style, but in terms of practicality, it has very limited use. This move is a hit grab, and although you can try to use it as a way to approach, it's not worth it due to its high risk, low reward nature. With assist, it's definitely possible to combo into it, but you might as well try to endo combo into a ground super instead for more consistent damage. Finally, Ricochet Slash is her worst special, at least in my view. It has very reactable startup, low damage, and long recovery, meaning that characters with quick supers can easily punish her. Marrow also bounces away on hit, so she doesn't get much in the way of offensive pressure even if this move somehow manages to connect. Overall, Marrow's special moves aren't very good, as having 3 bad ones and 1 good one isn't exactly the recipe needed for success in this game. If you have to choose which special move to use, just go with Boomerang and maybe Towering Spine if the enemy is slow enough to be hit by it. Marrow's support value also isn't that impressive. Ricochet Slash is just as bad as an assist as it is on point, so let's just move on. Boomerang is easily Marrow's most useful assist. It allows for decent to good block strings and combo opportunities, and it can also be used from pretty much anywhere on the screen. It's also not an assist that I would call gimmicky, so it does have genuinely meaningful use when in neutral. Her DHC potential is a bit better than her assist, thankfully. Stinger Bones is a nice way to tack on some damage during a DHC string, although its range does prevent it from being a guaranteed way to tack on any super afterwards and have it automatically connect. If the enemy is at a weird angle, however, try using Bone Burst. The homing projectiles remind me of Venom's web super, as even enemies who are above her can be hit with this move, within reason. If they block it, Marrow is actually kind of safe here, so you can generally return to neutral risk-free. The move also does good chip damage in this instance too. Marrow is like Sanson in that even though they have really cool tools that help set them apart from the other characters in the game, we don't see them be used that often, especially not on high-level play. This is a bit of a shame, as I think Marrow looks and sounds awesome. When you think of hidden boss characters in fighting games, Akuma probably teleports into your mind, and he can be a real menace when on the offense in Marvel 2. For all of his strengths though, there are flaws that hold him back a bit, and learning to stay on top of these flaws is key. In a throwback to 5 years ago when I talked about Surfbot and Wolverine in the beginning of this video, Akuma has the same amount of health as these guys, meaning that he gets nuked by combos and specials. This is bad enough, but when you combine it with his stubby normals, it means that Akuma has to risk dying from a simple mistake when attempting to get up close and personal with the enemy to start his offense. Akuma also has good mobility with his fast air movement, and he can also bring the fight to the opponent via his air fireball and multi-hitting dive kick. This poises Akuma as a character who lives and dies by close range pressure, as he's way more effective from up close than afar. He simply doesn't have the tools to truly contest the enemy with zoning specifically, as it isn't too hard to just avoid his projectiles, and it's not like he has any long range normals either. If he needs to quickly gain ground, Akuma can rely on his teleport. This move has invincibility during its startup and active frames, but it does leave him open a bit towards the end, so make sure you try and cover it with an assist. If you're forced into a position where you have to fight from a distance, however, you can try to chip the enemy with his large fireball supers. This strategy can work in small doses, but overly relying on super-induced chip damage will leave you down on meter, so you don't want to get predictable. Akuma has 3 standard assists, and his first one, the fireball, isn't very good. It has no durability, and it can easily be dodged, so it's kind of useless. His DP assist, however, isn't that bad, and it has more positive qualities than negative ones, but his Tatsu assist is the cream of the crop. This hits the enemy multiple times and induces a lot of hit stun, making it great for starting combos. If they block the move, you can force a mix-up with a high or a low attack, and with how efficient characters like Magneto or Storm can be in situations like this, it's quite good to have. It's also good for catching enemies who rely on ground movement to rush you down, so combining this assist with another character on your team with a good DP assist can work wonders for your point character. On top of all this, Akuma also has some solid DHC options. His DP super has some invincibility on startup, making it good for blowing through the enemy's attack. Akuma's Fireball super is quite average in its functionality, but it hits really hard, so there's no complaints from me. However, if you need a stylish DHC option when up close, try going for his Tatsu super. This is like Mecha Geef's Siberian Blizzard as it sends them upwards. Akuma also has his iconic Raging Demon, and while you can't combo into it naturally due to the move being a command grab, it's possible to incorporate this move into resets. It does cost a lot of meter due to it being a level 3 super, but its damage often makes it worth it, especially as a last resort move. Finally, I wanted to spend a bit of time covering Akuma's damage output. This is one of his best and most scary qualities, as if he lands a single hit to neutral, he can confirm it into a big combo, and even something as simple as this that only requires 1 bar can potentially even the whole playing field. Whether you're doing an air combo with a launcher or a ground combo that ends in a simple super, there are plenty of ways to score meaningful damage on any opponent, and if Akuma is fighting a low health character, then it's gonna get even better. His air heavy Tatsu sticks out to me especially as it does a nice chunk of damage with or without a super afterwards, and as it hits multiple times, it's quite consistent. If you like characters who rush in and try their best to stay in, definitely try Akuma out, but perhaps go with someone else if you like having high or even average health. Ken is the final Street Fighter character in this video, and he shares a lot of similar problems with the other Shotos. With that being said though, he has some really valuable tools that help him stand apart. Ken has solid support value with useful assists and DHC options. His Fireball assist is nothing special, but his DP assist is known for being amazing as it's invincible on startup, and his Tatsu assist allows for elaborate hit confirms into combos. By the way, words cannot describe how annoying it could be to deal with this DP assist, as Ken can blow through any opponent's offensive pressure with a well-timed Shoryuken. His Shoryurepa super comes out instantly and has invincibility for the first hit, allowing Ken to consistently confirm into a horizontal DHC route. Due to most of the animation keeping the enemy grounded, it also allows for more DHCs out of it, and these can lead to big damage. Shinryuken is also instant and has lots of invincibility, so if the enemy is right above you, you can quickly DHC into it to catch them. You can also button mash during the super for even more damage, making it even better. Shippujinrai from Street Fighter 3 is also in Marvel 2, and this is like a kick version of Shoryurepa. Either way, Ken provides you with strong assists and DHC potential, and this is obviously an amazing quality for any team in the game to have. Just like Akuma, Ken has stubby normals but insane damage if he manages to land a hit. This is mostly due to his glitched air Tatsu that lacks any damage scaling, so doing a launcher into Air Magic series and then ending it with heavy air Tatsu is the ultimate simple Ken combo. This gets even better when you combine it with assists that allow Ken to further extend combos, and this means that if most characters have around half their life bar left, Ken can easily take them out. Air Tatsu is a huge part of Ken's neutral too, and I've often seen Ken players try to approach the enemy from the skies with this move. It's a low risk, high reward option that can lead to big damage even when used outside of a combo, so you want to go for this move often. Moving on from the air Tatsu, Ken can also do solid damage without it as his supers do hit pretty hard, especially for 1 bar of meter. He doesn't have a big level 3 like Ryu, Akuma, or even Dan, but with how effective his other moves are, Ken doesn't really need one. He gets by just fine with his regular toolkit, and Ken is the type of character in this game that rewards simplicity. You don't have to do anything requiring super high execution or anything like that, but his rewards that he provides you with are still respectable, so he's great for beginners. Like with Sansan, I'm legally mandated to focus on the negatives, so let's end Ken's section on a sour note. Ken has pretty limited mobility, and although his roll is a really unique movement tool, it's still not amazing. The roll doesn't cover much distance, and without assists, it leaves him open to being attacked, so you might want to rely on wave dashing or super jumping to approach the enemy. Ken also can't double jump, air dash, teleport, or fly, so his method of approaching is very linear and predictable. In order to corner the enemy, Ken heavily relies on assists, so if you can take his teammates out first, then he's gonna suffer heavily. Ken also takes 6% more damage than the average character, so common defensive strategies involving zoning can lead to him taking big chip damage over the course of the match. This puts his strategy of rushing the enemy down into the spotlight, and if Ken makes a mistake or gets predictable, he can easily be punished by a long-range super or even a team super. For all of his flaws, Ken still provides an amazing amount of truly useful support to a team, and there's a reason why you see him a lot in low to mid-tier matches. BB Hood is the final character in the video, and don't let her cutesy appearance fool you, because this girl is a true psycho. Maybe not as psycho as your ex who keyed your car after you didn't respond to her text right away, but pretty psycho nonetheless. She has some really good strategies and team super routes, but there are also some weaknesses for us to cover. With how dominant air mobility and attacks are in Marvel vs. Capcom, it's a bit of a shame that BB Hood doesn't have many great air options. Although BB Hood can double jump, she can't fly, teleport, etc., and there's only one air special move for her to use. Sheer and Fire does have good range and it helps her to stall her movement when in the air, but it also leaves her open to being attacked if it whiffs, and if BB Hood repeatedly stalls in the air, there's nothing stopping the enemy from quickly moving right underneath her. BB Hood also has no air supers, so you can't DHC out to make it safe, and this also limits her air combos. Her air normals also range from being mediocre to a bit useful, and I'd say that BB Hood's best air normals are her heavies. Heavy Kick can be quickly repeated in neutral as a way to build meter when retreating, and Heavy Punch is often used as a jump in. This move doesn't travel very far despite being a series of literal gunshots, but it's not bad from around mid-range. The multi-hitting nature of this move also makes it good for block strings, so I recommend using this move when you're diagonally above them. A few solid air normals and one air special isn't going to cut it however, and it means that BB Hood relies on assists to help her when in the air. BB Hood's normals are also super stubby. Her grounded and air lights have very little range, and although medium punch looks like a solid anti-air in theory, there's no way to use it this way in neutral due to medium attacks being combo tools in Marvel 2. Heavy Punch has decent range, but the length of the move makes it committal, and the 7 potential hits often don't connect reliably. Heavy Kick is unique in that it's a stationary attack that explodes after a period of time, but it will whiff on aerial or faraway opponents, so its realistic utility is limited. Most of BB Hood's crouching normals are also nothing special with the exception of Crouching Light Kick. This is her fastest button, so you'd want to do this a lot to start combos or block strings. BB Hood also has some cool command normals, and while moves like Tricky Basket are actually pretty useful due to their space control and combo potential, moves like Stumble and Blade are anything but useful, so your mileage with this may vary. Overall, BB Hood's normals are serviceable, and while they can definitely get the party started when performed at just the right time, they don't stop her from being zoned out or rushed down. Finally, let's look at BB Hood's supers. She has 3 of them, and the most common of these is Cruel Hunting. BB Hood and friends pull out the straps and go to town on the enemy, dealing massive damage in the process, and this move is most commonly seen as part of team supers with Juggernaut especially. When performed this way, every character in the game can get nuked, so you have to be very careful when BB Hood has lots of meter. Beautiful Memory is a hit grab that leads to a pretty funny animation, and due to it being a cinematic, it does a fixed amount of damage. It's challenging to DHC into this move due to its strict cancel window, but it's nice to have. Finally, Hyper Apple for You is an unblockable attack. Having access to an unblockable super makes DHC block strings deadly, and this quality reminds me a little bit of Shumagorath. If the move misses though, 3 bombs will still come out, leading to a deadly knowledge check for unaware opponents. I wouldn't say that any of BB Hood's supers are amazing on their own, but when incorporated into DHCs or team supers, they can be truly devastating. If you're going to have BB Hood on the team, try and find a deadly team super for you to use, as this can truly turn the course of the match. And with that, we're finally at the end of our journey. This video was way longer than I thought it was going to be going into it, and I worked on it for weeks. A good chunk of it was actually recorded and edited in an Airbnb on my laptop's keyboard because I forgot to bring my controller with me on holiday, so I did the best I could given the circumstances. Out of all the characters I covered, the only ones that suck, at least in my view, are Roll and Servbot, and I believe that every other character can be played effectively with enough time and dedication put into them. I spent a lot of sleepless nights and even mornings working on this video, so if you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate it, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next one.